Now, with all the very latest from around the world and here at home, it's the ITV News at 10.
The true horror is in the detail. Much of it today provided by the Ukrainian president himself, direct to the UN. For the advancing Ukrainian forces on the ground, it was another day of gruesome discovery. And with them, Dan and his team continued their work documenting the atrocities one by one as they pushed further out of the capital, an eerie journey into the heart of darkness.
Only now is the truth beginning to emerge about the horrors that have taken place.
At the UN, ambassadors were forced to listen to more of Russia's mendacious drivel designed to insult the intelligence of even the smallest child. But the verdict was clear.
We are appalled by what we have seen and reiterate our solidarity with Ukraine.
Talk, though, is easy, and action remains, one could argue, relatively limited. We'll talk to Libby in Westminster and Emma in Washington about how the thinking of the West is evolving and what might really be going on. Also, tonight, more chaos as the man appointed to champion LGBT rights resigns.
There comes a moment in public life where your principles are really important. And my principles are around LGBT inclusion.
The Met needs an outsider. Stephen Lawrence's brother on just how much has not changed in 30 years.
We never get the point where you go, they can close that. But then you've got a system that's been put in place to always be unbalanced.
Will it be Ukraine, cost of living or Partygate? Carl tries to take the temperature of voters in advance of local elections. And dancing together, the Ukrainian and the Russian ask the world to stand with Ukraine. Good evening. For years after they stained the conscience of the world, Western officials agonized about the massacres of the 1990s in places like Srebrenica and Rwanda, and swore that such depravity must never again be allowed license. But today we watch on as Russia's army visits its barbarism on the citizens of Ukraine. The scenes we have witnessed and the accounts we have heard are once again unspeakable, and many will find them hard to see and hard to hear. The rape of women and girls, the deaths of children, a man bound, beaten, gagged and shot in the head, bodies killed by the shelling of civilian targets left to rot where they lie in the streets. What our teams are witnessing for themselves on the ground entirely bears out the angry and the impassioned address given to the United Nations today by Ukraine's President Zelensky himself, which was simply shattering in its detail. Mothers, he said, had had their tongues cut out before they were raped in front of their children. And Dan joins us now to talk about this. Dan, you and your team are helping the world to bear witness to this crime by crime, atrocity by atrocity, day by day. Could you just talk us through what you saw today and how you saw it? Okay, Dan, thank you very much indeed. Well, the plea for justice for the brutalized people of Ukraine delivered to the United Nations today by President Volodymyr Zelensky was angry and impassioned and deeply shocking, calling on the horror of what he himself has witnessed and perhaps too the legacy of his own Jewish family's experience of the Holocaust. He accused Russia of the most terrible war crimes since the Second World War, calling for immediate Nuremberg-style tribunals to hold those responsible to account. He described in graphic detail the shooting, the raping, the torture and the killing of defenseless civilians by Vladimir Putin's forces. And in case his audience didn't get the message, he showed them equally graphic video evidence. It was a speech designed to jolt the watching world into action. Well, let's get some analysis on what that is actually going to mean in practice in a moment. I'll speak to Libby in Westminster. But first, let's just go to Emma. Strong words, Emma, there from the Ukrainian president at the UN, even demanding Russia's removal, but presumably no chance of that happening. OK, Libby, thank you very much indeed. Well, back home, and now to matters at home at least, and yet more embarrassment has been heaped on the government in the row over conversion therapy that seems to grow more furious by the day. The latest development has seen the resignation of the very person appointed by the government to champion the rights of LGBT plus people in the workplace. He spoke exclusively to Paul. Paul, he had some pretty tough things to say, did he not? OK, Paul, thank you very much indeed. Now, it is hard to imagine the pain the family of Stephen Lawrence has been through in the 30 years since his death, of losing him, of knowing that deep, ingrained racism and indeed corruption robbed them of justice over and over again. But there is no doubting the impassioned authority of his brother when he says that the Met must rethink itself once and for all. That, he told Charlene today, can only be done by putting an outsider in charge now that Cressida Dick has gone. Stephen Lawrence's brother, Stuart, there talking to Charlene White. Now, it's axiomatic in political journalism that you tend to overwrite, overread and overanalyse local elections because, of course, for many, they are a chance to punish a national government without actually changing it. But even so, the set due up soon are hard to get a handle on. Are people furious with Partygate or relatively reassured with the government's handling of Ukraine? And what about the cost of living crisis? Which issue is uppermost in voters' minds? And will that tell us anything at all about the run-up to the next general election? To try and find out, and good luck to him, Carl has been to Nuneaton, a council held by Labour for years until the Conservatives took it last time. One of the greatest modern-day England Rugby League players was honoured at Windsor Castle today for his contribution to the sport and indeed to the awareness of motor neurone disease. Rob Burrow won numerous honours and trophies in a 17-year career playing for the Leeds Rhinos and England before retiring from the game in 2017. Finally, apart from the seemingly unbreakable spirit of the Ukrainian people in the face of all that they are having to endure, there does seem little room for any optimism at all arising out of this war. But two ballerinas, one Ukrainian who fled the war and the other Russian who quit the Bolshoi ballet because of the war, have sent out their own plea for peace. The pair danced together in a special charity performance last night. That is all for now on another sobering and frankly distressing day. See you tomorrow. Thank you for watching.
Tomorrow on the day, national insurance rises, adding to the cost of living crisis for millions.